Hello Year 7, it's Mrs Gill here and I'm going to be taking your lesson today. Today we are going to look at how did the people of the medieval period try to prevent the Black Death from spreading. So first I'd like you to get yourself ready for the lesson. You are going to need your history workbook, a pen, you might need some scrap paper, and I'd like you to put away or turn off any distractions such as mobile phones and televisions. Pause now and get yourself ready. When you are, press play again. Last lesson, you looked at how did they try to treat the Black Death. So our Do Now task is all about that. You have 5 questions to answer and I'd like you to pause the video to try to answer them from memory without your notes. Remember, this is one of the best ways we can improve our memories. Pause now and when you are finished, press play. Well done on having a go at your Do Now, and here are the answers. I'd like you to pause the video and mark your own. If you get one wrong, can you write the answer into your workbook, perhaps in a different colour pen? Don't forget to give yourself a score out of 5 for how many you got correct. So today's title is, how did they try to prevent the Black Death spreading? We are going to look at what a prevention was. We are going to look at different rational and supernatural preventions. And we're going to try and find out why some preventions did and did not help. Now it's time to update our knowledge organisers once again. Remember, you have a copy of this at the front of your workbook. Today we are going to finish off theme number 2 by looking at preventions. And we're also going to focus on the whole section at the bottom about preventions here. Now preventions are split into supernatural and rational, and we're going to be looking at them in a lot more detail. We're also going to be looking at lots of new key words in today's lesson. The first is number 5, fasting. That's when you give up food for a period of time. We're also going to look at number 7, flagellants. These are groups of people who walk through the streets whipping themselves. You'll find out a lot more about them today. We're also going to look at number 12, a pilgrimage. That's a holy journey to a religious place. Number 14, a pomander. That's a large locket filled with sweet smelling herbs that was worn around the waist. Number 15, posies. These are bunches of flowers or sweet smelling herbs. The most important word is number 16, prevention. That's a way to stop healthy people getting sick. And we're going to look at number 18, rakers. These are people whose job was to clear animal dung from the streets. So as you can see, lots of words. If you'd like to pause the video to finish highlighting your knowledge organiser, you can do. Press play when you're ready to move forward. Now it's time for your starter. This is activity 4.2 in your workbook. You need to look at sources F and G, and both of them are on the screen as well as in your workbook. I want you to think about the 2 questions. What are the people in the images doing? And why do you think they are doing this? You are going to need to look closely at the 2 sources and think really hard about this. I will also put up some clues and tips to help you. If you don't want to see these yet, then pause now. Here are some hints to get you thinking. I'd like you to pause and write any ideas you come up with in your workbook. So let's have a look at some good answers for these questions. So first of all, we need to describe what are the people in the image doing. The people are walking through the streets. You may spot that they're barefoot, so not wearing any shoes, and they seem to be carrying kind of religious artifacts, and some may even be on their hands and knees praying. They're clearly asking God to forgive their sins. You may also have spotted that some are hurting themselves or whipping themselves, and that's why a lot of them are walking around with no clothes on their back. Now we need to think about why they are doing this. Well, lots of people in the medieval period believed that the Black Death was sent by God to punish their sins. And so, many people thought that by punishing themselves, so hurting themselves, whipping themselves, they would save themselves from God's anger and therefore save themselves from the Black Death. Now, I'd like you to pause the video and write down one of these ideas which you missed. Press play when you're ready to continue. Now, let's look at preventions. People were so terrified of the Black Death, they were willing to try all sorts of methods of prevention to keep themselves and their families safe. Prevention means a way to stop healthy people getting sick. So in other words, we're finding out how people tried to stop themselves from catching the Black Death. We're going to focus first on supernatural preventions. Now, lots of the preventions we're going to look at are supernatural or based on religion, and that's because people were told by their local priests that the only way to stop the disease spreading was to show God that you were sorry for their sins and to beg for forgiveness. And this was done in lots of different ways. Firstly, people could use prayer or fast, give up food. Some lit candles as offerings to God. Others went on pilgrimage, so holy religious journeys to an important religious place to show God that they were sorry. They even tried banning activities that they thought were seen as offensive to God, and one such activity was that they banned wrestling matches from churchyards. In London and some other towns, flagellants walked through the streets whipping themselves. And as we found out from the starter task, they did this because they thought they would be showing God that they were sorry and that they'd already been punished for their sins, and so he wouldn't give them the Black Death. It's important for us to remember that religious preventions did little to stop the bacteria and disease from spreading, so many people continued to get unwell. There were also rational preventions, and many of these were based on the idea that miasma, or bad smelly air, was causing the Black Death. The first is that the wealthy left towns where the Black Death was and they moved to the countryside. And you can see that in this image. However, sometimes it also helped the Black Death to spread from towns to the countryside. And also, this wasn't an option for everybody, especially poor people, as often they didn't have anywhere else to go, and so they had to stay in the towns. King Edward III was so convinced that miasma was causing the Black Death that he wrote to the Mayor of London ordering him to clear the filth from the streets of London. By the 1370s, there were 12 teams of rakers whose job was to clear animal dung from the streets. The Mayor of London also started charging people fines for throwing their litter in the streets. and butchers were punished for dumping blood and animal remains on the streets. And all of this gradually helped the streets to become cleaner. But it did little to stop the spread of disease, as it did not stop the bacteria from spreading. There were some other rational preventions based on miasma, and these were often used by ordinary people. So, for example, ordinary people carried posies. These are bunches of sweet-smelling flowers or sweet-smelling herbs, and they would hold them under their nose as they walked around to avoid breathing in the miasma. Others wore pomadours. Now, these were lockets filled with sweet-smelling flowers and herbs again, and they would be worn around the waist. Other people lit fires in their homes or even lit fires in the streets in the hope of overpowering the bad air. Some people even avoided taking baths, as it was believed that the water would open the skin's pores and allow the bad air into the body. As you can imagine, that just meant that people got smellier. Again, a lot of these preventions did little to stop the bacteria from spreading, and people continued to get ill. We're now going to look at some other rational preventions. Now, it was commonly believed that people with the back death should be avoided. This included stopping visiting the houses of friends and family who were rumoured to be ill. They even tried avoiding victims of the Black Death on the street, so keeping your distance. Some towns were so scared of travellers bringing the disease into the town that they locked their gates. So, in other words, stopped other people from entering the town. These were actually quite sensible preventions. However, it was not always possible to stay away from those that were ill, especially if you were living in the same house or if your home was very close to somebody else's. And often the disease had already spread quickly before many people started showing signs that they were unwell. So again, no matter how much people tried to avoid each other, the Black Death often had spread so quickly that it made it nearly impossible to stop it from people from getting unwell. You are now ready to do activity 4.3 in your workbook. Now, before you attempt to do this, it is really important that you read first, and you've got some reading materials for the lesson in your workbook, and there are 2 pages that I would recommend you read really carefully before you start the tasks. After you've read them, then I want you to define 3 key words and try and write them in your own words. Then I'd like you to fill in the table that allows you to describe 3 supernatural and 3 rational preventions for the Black Death. Now, the information in the workbook includes more than 3, so you get to pick which ones to focus on. And I've already given you 1 supernatural and 1 rational one to get you started. For each one, you need to describe what the prevention was and then just draw a quick picture or symbol to go with it. Then I would like you to choose 1 prevention that did not stop the Black Death from spreading and explain why. Again, that information will be in the reading resources, so please have a good look at that. And finally, I want you to choose 1 prevention that might have helped slow down the spread of the Black Death, and I want you to explain why. Pause the video to complete the tasks, and when finished, press play. Well done for completing the tasks. Now, if you'd like to take this further, you can do activity 4.4. Now, this will give you an opportunity to research and find out more detail about flagellants and how they punish themselves. You can start with the website on the screen or even the image on the screen to help you. If you'd like to carry out this research, pause the video now and press play to carry on. Well done for another amazing lesson, Year 7. I look forward to teaching you next time when we will be looking at how the Black Death changed the lives of those who survived.